not nice and early, nice and late. Let me just prepare my screen for sharing. Okay. So do you all see the slides on your screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So, so yesterday we spent the day just going over the aspects of the Buddha gem. And in this case, we need to remember that Buddhas really are a place that, or really are the being that we can turn to and seek guidance and help. So they are a true place of refuge. And the reason why they are a true place of refuge is because over their practice, they've been able to perfect all virtues. And in particular, there are 3 virtues that they are complete and perfect with. And that is, they have omniscient wisdom. So they know, they are all-knowing. And this encompasses both time and space, as well as all phenomena and all beings. The next is that they have boundless compassion. So their compassion is absolutely without exception and applies to all beings in all worlds, in all places. And then they have the virtue of purity. And here, when we talk about purity, we mean the complete elimination and removal of all defilements. So they don't have anger, they don't have hatred, they don't have all these type of negative defilements at all. They only have virtues, they only have kindness, benevolence, and so forth. And so because of these virtues and the perfection of these virtues, Buddhas, all Buddhas, are a place that we can take refuge in. Now, when we say to take refuge in all the Buddhas, it means throughout time and space. Now, for us, it might be a bit hard because the Buddha we have the closest connection to is, of course, our own Shakyamuni Buddha. And so all that we have, all the Dharma we have, and even, you know, we, as in myself and Si Fasi and Sansi Fasi, as being part of the Sangha, this is all possible because of Sakyamuni Buddha. So, of course, it is natural with human nature that we have a particular affinity to Shakyamuni Buddha. But when we take refuge and when we learn about the Dharma, hopefully we can slowly come to understand that all Buddhas are equal. All Buddhas are just as compassionate. And so whenever we meet with anyone who qualifies to be a Buddha, we take refuge in them, we honor, we respect, and we cherish them just as much as we cherish Shakyamuni Buddha. And this means that, you know, if you meet with a Buddha, whichever Buddha it is, because of their perfection, we can rely on their teachings. And even more importantly, we can aim to become just like them, to become a Buddha as well. So in this respect, all Buddhas are equal. And when you read about the differences in the sutras about the different Buddhas, you know, when they existed, what their disciples look like and so forth, all these differences, it's really because of their situation, the conditions, the causes and conditions they have will manifest differences. So it's not that there is an actual difference between the Buddhas. All the Buddhas are equal in the sense that they have perfected all virtues. So that's just a quick recap of what we focused on yesterday, is the Buddha gem. And so today, hopefully, we can get through both the Dharma and the Sangha gem. Okay. So after talking about the Buddha gem, we now move on to the Dharma gem. And here the verse begins with dried well and deserted village. Suffering is due to such decay. There are no people. The other shore has forests, springs, and happiness. Homage to the Dharma, most honorable in ending defilements. Now, this verse praises or tries to explain the virtues of the Dharma gem using two similes. Now, the similes are of 1, a dried well, and 2, a deserted village. These need to be explained separately and the details filled in order to help you understand how these two similes reflect the value of the Dharma gem. Now here, just an interesting side note, if you look at the second line, this line here, the second line actually if you read the Chinese alone, if you were purely just to read the verse, some people can mistakenly interpret the meaning. So that's why I've broken that sentence, because the first half, due to such decay, relates to the dried well, whereas there are no people relates to the simile of the deserted village. And with the verses in this particular book from Venerable Yin-Shun, most of it can be read like poetry. But if you think back to the olden days when Buddha started teaching, the Dharma teachings were actually handed down verbally, and one would actually have to memorize it. So to help with the process of memorization, verses were created. And these verses basically just tried to capture keyword or phrases relating to certain parts of the teachings to help trigger memory about that whole section of the teaching. So that's why in this second line, when you read it, you need to understand that it should be split into two. Now, in some scriptural texts, particularly if you start to read the consciousness-only school texts, there are a lot of verses in those to help people trigger their memory. And as a result, some of these verses, when you read them, it doesn't make sense because they're littered with numbers as well. So when you start to actually go back to the original text and there are verses as well as the whole description, you need to be able to understand the whole content of the description in order to make sense of the verses. So this is something that I just wanted to share with you all as part of my experience with translating Venerable Yin-Shun's works over the past years, so that when you start reading, some people will only read the verses and then it will not make sense, or you can misinterpret the meaning if you don't match it to the actual content in the actual explanation. So that's just a side aspect about when you come across verses in the Buddhist scriptural texts. So the first simile is the dried well. And here, a dried well can be understood literally to be an empty man-made well, or you could also think of maybe like natural sinkholes and situations like that. So in this simile, it is of a person who is in the wilderness, and unfortunately, they fall into a sinkhole. But luckily, they manage to grab hold of some dead vines hanging down the side of the walls, and so they don't fall to the bottom. But at the bottom of the sinkhole or the dried well, there are 4 poisonous snakes waiting eagerly for the person to fall down. Now, on the vine, there is a rat that is gnawing away at the vine, so it can snap and break at any moment. Now, in such a dangerous situation, that person lifts their head and sees honey dripping down from the vine. Now, they become quite preoccupied with trying to get to the honey and eat the honey. so preoccupied they completely forget about the danger they are in. Now, in fact, they are so engrossed in tasting and eating the honey that even the stinging bees attacking him or her cannot bring them to their senses. So what this simile is trying to express is that sentient beings are in the wilderness of cyclic existence. And due to our karmic forces, we experience the results of having a body, which is made up of the 5 aggregates. So the 5 aggregates are form, which relates to the physical body, and then there is feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. Now, these 4 aggregates relate to all mental activities of the mind. The vine that the person holds on to is symbolic of our life, and the gnawing rat represents the constant encroachment of impermanence. That means with each passing breath, this life will soon come to an end. Now, these elements of the dried well, the dead vines, and the gnawing rats all represent the suffering that impermanence creates. And so the second line says, due to such decay. Now, at the bottom, remember there are 4 snakes, and these 4 snakes symbolizes the 4 elements. And these 4 elements are earth, water, fire, and wind, which in turn symbolizes the qualities of solidity, fluidity, temperature, and motion. Now, these 4 elements are another way to categorize the composition of sentient beings. And when these 4 elements are out of balance, sentient beings can become sick and even die, just like being bitten by a poisonous snake. The honey reflects our indulgence in the 5 desires. And this means that while we're under the stress of impermanence and cyclic existence, in such a dangerous situation, we often completely forget about the danger because we experience a bit of happiness. The inattention to the stinging bees is like ignoring the painful results that come from our indulgence in the 5 desires. So if the great suffering of cyclic existence cannot cause us to be alert to the danger we are in, this truly reflects how ignorant we humans can be. Now, the other simile is of a deserted village. And because it is deserted, the second line also says, there are no people. This simile is of someone trying to escape persecution, and while on the run from authorities, they come across a village that is completely deserted. The person wants to rest in the village for the night and then continue on the next day to find safe haven. But suddenly, a deity appears and tells the person that bandits stay in this village, and so they should keep running instead. If they stay and encounter the bandits, they will lose their life. The message of this simile is that there are people who want to escape from these 3 realms, who want to escape the control of Mara. Now, these people learn and practice the Buddha Dharma to try and escape, but they can fail at the gates of the 6 sense faculties. Now, the deserted village represents the 6 sense faculties, which refers to our sensory abilities relating to sight, hearing, sensation, awareness, and understanding. Generally, people think that deep down inside, somewhere in us, there is a self. But the truth is that there is no such self, and nothing of a true or real intrinsic self can be found within us. When our six sense faculties make contact with their corresponding sense objects, this gives rise to the defiled sixth sense consciousness, which are symbolized by the bandits. The sixth sense consciousness react with the sense objects through the sense faculties. And so greed can arise when there's no need to be greedy. Anger can arise when there's no reason to be angry. And all sorts of defilements can arise. And these defilements can lead us to actions that are harmful and eventually rob us of our virtues and our wisdom. So you might think, what does it mean when the sixth sense consciousness react with their objects through the faculties? An example would be, take for example, the eye faculty, our ability of sight. So our eyes, the sense faculty of the eyes, comes across an object, say a chocolate cake or a brownie. And then the nose faculty also starts to be able to sense the aroma of freshly baked brownies. So the eyes see that thing, the nose smell that thing. What happens next is consciousness arises. The eye consciousness and the nose consciousness starts to do its function and say, this blob, this brown blob is a brownie. Looks like a brownie, it smells like a brownie. And the consciousness starts to react and it registers there's a brownie in front of me. What happens next is a whole chain of events where you start to think, do I like brownies? Do I want this particular brownie? Am I hungry? And so forth. And then volition will happen where you decide either to, no, I'll leave it alone, or I'll have one bite, or I'll have two bites, or I'll have the whole lot. Now, if this brownie doesn't belong to you and you just take it, then you've committed the act of stealing. And so whoever the brownie belongs to is probably going to get mad at you. And this can start, a minor conflict and so forth. So a whole chain of reaction and subsequent activities can happen purely because the eye faculty made contact with the external object and the nose faculty made contact with its external object. So that's what we mean by the sense consciousness reacts with the sense objects through the sense faculties. Now, some people, because of this chain reaction, they can even fall into the evil destinies due to the bad karma that they create. And all of this is driven by our defilements. Therefore, if we want to escape the three realms that are under the control of Mara, we should learn to practice the Buddha Dharma and not allow ourselves to be deceived by our sense faculties. Instead, we should progress forward diligently until we reach a place that is truly safe. So in this simile, after leaving the deserted village where the bandits hide out, the person continues running until they come to the border with an adjacent country. Now there is a great river in between, blocking the person from moving further. And all the while, the authorities are catching up. At that time, the person looks across the river and sees the other shore, which belongs to another country. On the other shore, there are lush forests and clean streams and springs. It is truly a safe place where one can be happy. Hence, the person risks everything and swims across the river to try and get to the other shore. Successfully doing so means they gain liberation from the peril of persecution, and this represents cyclic existence. When they get to the other side, the shore of Nirvana, then they can truly rest. So this simile teaches us that learning the Buddha Dharma means we should not let our sixth sense faculties delude us. Rather, we should bravely cross the river to leave behind cyclic existence. Now, only by doing so can we escape from Mara's world and control. And when we arrive at the shore of Nirvana, we have arrived at the land where we can truly rest and enjoy the peaceful happiness of no more births and no more deaths. Now, using these two similes, Venerable Yin-Shun skillfully highlights the aspects of all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, and this is the dried well. All dharmas are without a self, so this is the deserted village. And nirvana is peace, and this is the other shore. Collectively, these three make up the three Dharma seals, which are three great principles of the Buddha Dharma. Moreover, Nirvana is the ultimate place of refuge for all sages, and reaching Nirvana requires us to put into practice the teachings on impermanence and no self. Nirvana is the true Dharma gem that we take refuge in and honor and cherish. Although the worldly practice of meditation can lead some of us and allow some of us to tame some defilements and desires, as well as experience meditative bliss, only nirvana, only liberation can be considered as truly ending all desires. And this is what the sages of the three vehicles all attain using wisdom. Now, among all the types of liberation from desires, nirvana is the most sublime and honorable, and hence the last line in the verse says, most honorable in ending defilements. Now, nirvana is the place of refuge for all enlightened beings and all who practice the Buddha Dharma. But due to the differences in the level of awakening, there are different levels of nirvana, such as nirvana with residue, nirvana without residue, and mahaparinirvana. In truth, nirvana is also the righteous Dharma. Now, the righteous Dharma is a state of personal realization and experience. And it is wonderful, but it cannot be conceived or imagined using our ordinary worldly imagination. Therefore, it is explained with the idiom, only the person drinking the water knows how hot or cold it is. So the next verse further explains how wonderful the Dharma gem is, using the expedient teachings in the sutras and treaties. And the verse says, the righteous Dharma is wonderful and inconceivable. It is wholesome, pure, permanent, and peaceful. Following the path of the ancient sages, it is possible to reach nirvana. So, the first aspect to know is that the righteous Dharma is wholesome, and this wholesomeness is a transcendental and absolute form of perfect wholesomeness. The second is that the righteous Dharma is pure because it cannot be tainted by defilements and impurities. Moreover, this righteous Dharma does not arise based on defiled causes and conditions, and hence it is regarded as pure. Third, the righteous Dharma is permanent, and this permanence is in the sense that it transcends the aspect of time. It neither arises nor ceases. It is ever present and always as such, just like space. Fourth, the righteous Dharma is peaceful. Now, this means that there is no more birth, no more aging, no sickness, and no death. There's no sorrow, no grief, no suffering, and no more afflictions. The righteous Dharma is a joy that is absolute and free from all types of bonds. So in summary, the righteous Dharma is inconceivable, and the virtues and merits from awakening to this Dharma or the attainment of Nirvana is also inconceivable. So by now, you must have gathered that the word Dharma can have many meanings in different contexts. Sometimes Dharma is used to refer to things, objects, phenomena. But when we talk about the Dharma gem in terms of the stages of wisdom along the path of practice, then it's more often that you will hear the term or see the term righteous Dharma. However, in terms of the levels of liberation attained when one awakens to the Dharma using wisdom, using prajna, then sometimes the term nirvana is used. Therefore, the righteous Dharma is also called nirvana. So what this means is when you hear the word Dharma, you need to make clear of the context in order to understand which meaning to apply. So for example, when the context is about the result of the practice, what one gains, then the word Dharma can be understood to mean nirvana. When the context is about the path of practice and attaining the various levels of wisdom that helps us attain partial awakening, then the word Dharma can mean truth or teachings, methods, and so forth. So please be mindful that the word Dharma can have many meanings, and you need to adopt the right meaning and interpretation for the right context. Otherwise, things will not make sense. And this is especially so for those who are reading Chinese, where in Chinese, you just have that one character of fa, and it'll pop up everywhere. So it's even more confusing if you're reading in Chinese. For the English versions, through our translations and our understanding of the context, often we would have already made that choice to use either the word righteous Dharma, nirvana, or phenomena. But if you were to compare the Chinese and English together, you might see that where we've translated it as nirvana, the corresponding word in Chinese will still be the word Dharma. So this is just a side note on how to understand and interpret the word Dharma when you see it in the various teachings. Now, as long as we follow the right path of practice passed down from the ancient masters, and here ancient masters refers to the past Buddhas and the great sages that have attained awakening. If we follow this path that they have left for us, then we can realize and attain liberation and nirvana as well. The expositions, the teachings about the path of the ancient sages can be found in the sutras, in the Dharma teachings, such as the Agama Sutra and the Lankavatara Sutra, and many others. Now, given that this righteous Dharma is inherently always as such, likewise, the path of practice leading to nirvana is also always as such. All the Buddhas of the past have walked this righteous path in order to attain nirvana. And this path is not a creation of Shakyamuni Buddha. It is the normal path for all past Buddhas. And so it is called the path of the ancient sages. So that covers the aspect of the Dharma gem. And now we move on to the Sangha gem. And the verse says, employing the Dharma to unite the Sangha, with harmony, happiness, and purity as the basis. Equality of material gains and consistent doctrinal beliefs. Homage to the Sangha, most honorable among all communities. So after Prince Siddhartha, or Gautama, became Shakyamuni Buddha, he began to teach the Dharma. And gradually, over time, many people wanted to follow him, and some even became his monastic disciples, his renounced disciples. Now, the Buddha organized these disciples into a community, which is generally referred to as a Sangha. The word Sangha is Sanskrit and means community or any number of people living together for a certain purpose. The Buddhist Sangha has an organizational structure and governing regulations and rules and precepts. Therefore, the ancient masters in their translations would sometimes translate the word Sangha as harmonious community. Now, what did the Buddha rely on to unite the Sangha? He did not rely on his own power or authority, and this is evidenced by Buddha's statement, "I am not the one who brings the community together." Instead, the Buddha used the Dharma to bring the disciples together and organize them into a Sangha community. Dharma here refers to the righteous path of practice for all people, as well as the ultimate truth of nirvana. So here, when we say the Buddha used the Dharma to bring the disciples together, the word Dharma refers to a much broader meaning of both the practices, so the path, the causes, and the result, the effect. That means the Buddha used the Dharma to inspire the disciples to gather into a Sangha and mutually work towards the great goal of practicing and accomplishing the path. So in this sense, Dharma also includes the governing regulations, which are the rules that align with the righteous path of practice for all humans. This wholesome Dharma, in the sense of the truth, the teachings, the regulations, can help people to live together harmoniously. And this is what the Buddha relied on. He used the Dharma to establish rules and regulations, to organize and bring the monastic disciples together to form a Sangha. A Sangha that is established on the Dharma and that upholds the Dharma has three special qualities, and they are harmony, happiness, and wholesomeness. And these three qualities make up the foundation of a wholesome and healthy Sangha. Now let's look at these three foundations one by one. So the first is harmony. The quality of harmony encompasses both harmony in material and doctrinal aspects. The material matters, or the material aspect, can be further split into 6 aspects, and this is commonly known as the 6 harmonies. So the first is the harmony of ideology, and this is where members of the Sangha share common understanding and views that flow through to harmony in ways of thinking. Second is the harmony of precepts. All members of the Sangha uphold the same set of precepts, and this reflects commonality of rules and regulations adopted by each member. Third is the harmony of benefits. The Sangha members all live in the same way, and we share the daily necessities equally. This reflects the harmony in the sharing of economic resources. Now, the harmony in ideology, precepts, and economic resources form the essence of the Buddhist Sangha community. And when these three aspects are in harmony, these will be reflected in the mental and physical activities of each member. That means that between the disciples, there will be harmony when living together in the one location. There will be harmony in speech, and so there are no arguments. And last, there will be harmony in intention, such that each person delights in the same shared goal. So these 6 harmonies are what all monastic Sangha members should aim to uphold and practice. Now, apart from the material aspect, there is also the harmony in doctrinal understanding. And this refers to the truth that the disciples practice and awaken to. So this includes both Dharma teachings and the goal of Nibbana. The contents of the Dharma are consistent among all the Sangha members, and hence there is the saying, there is mutual understanding, and to breathe through the same nostrils as all the Buddhas. The monastic disciples living in this Sangha community, where there is harmony in both material and doctrinal aspects, will be able to settle their minds and bodies in peace and happiness. And in this way, they can diligently undertake their spiritual practice. In a Sangha community where there is harmony and happiness, the members can mutually encourage and discipline each other. That is, if a member commits a fault or a breach of the precepts, they can quickly repent with the help of the other Sangha members and restore their wholesomeness. And this is how the Sangha as a group can remain healthy and strong. So this is what is meant by mutual discipline. Discipline here is to help each other with compassion, to tame our faults and repent for the breaches. So remember, it has to be out of compassion, not out of spite. This way, Sangha members can continue to live together and practice together and have a supportive environment where one will feel safe and even a willingness to confess to their breaches and seek help to repent. Remember that Sangha members are ordinary humans too. So it is not possible for all monks and nuns to never break any of the precepts. Only enlightened beings who have eliminated all defilements will have such purity. So remember in the previous year when I talked about repentance, the practice of repentance in the Sangha community is a way to help us to restore wholesomeness when our defilements get the better of us and we end up behaving in ways that do not accord with the precepts, the Vinaya, and so forth. The underlying intention of the Buddha in setting up a Sangha community is to create a robust and wholesome community where monastics can diligently practice the path. Now, the Sangha can also be viewed from 2 different functions. In terms of one's personal practice of purifying the body and mind, the Sangha is the superior causes and conditions that helps one to attain peace, happiness, and purity. That means the Sangha is like a fierce smelting furnace that can produce sages. Now, in terms of benefiting others and promoting the Buddha Dharma, the Sangha is the collective force that maintains and propagates the Buddha Dharma. The Sangha is one of the 3 gems, and disciples of the Buddha should take refuge in and cherish the Sangha gem. Religious spiritual communities are not only found in Buddhism. For example, in Buddha's days, the 6 non-Buddhist Shramana teachers in ancient India also had their spiritual communities. And even today, there are various spiritual groups that are made up of clergy roles and ordinary household members. As humans and social beings, we tend to improve ourselves better when in a communal or group setting with support from like-minded people. Nonetheless, among all the various religions and their communities, the Buddhist Sangha, the Sangha that upholds the Buddha Dharma, is the most honorable, and therefore it is praised in the verse as most honorable among all communities. Now, the Sangha gem is the community that Buddhists can take refuge in, and so this verse is especially written as a teaching to the lay followers. Respect the Sangha and do not criticize them. Do not judge the Sangha members either. They follow the Buddha and practice his path. They protect and maintain the precious Dharma. Lay disciples should respect the Sangha, and this means to hold them in high esteem, as well as praising them with language and paying respects with physical actions such as prostration. Lay disciples should heed the guidance of Sangha members and offer support, such as providing them with daily necessities, albeit this should be within your own financial means. Such support can include the offering of clothing, food, medicine, bedding, and so on. Importantly, lay disciples should guard against developing any negativity towards Sangha members. In our modern times, among the Chinese Buddhists, there are those who can respect and have faith in the Buddha and Dharma gems, but for some reason, there aren't that many who respect and have confidence in the Sangha gem. Now, in some situations, people only respect the venerable that they have taken refuge under, or they respect just a few venerables that they know. With such kind of bias, one's respect for the full triple gem will, of course, be deficient. Now, this is a key reason why the precious virtues of the Buddha Dharma, the virtues of the triple gem, are unable to flourish and develop strong roots in those people's minds. There are many Sangha members in this world, and of course, we all have a mix of characters. Some are well practiced, while some are just ordinary monastics. Some are very diligent in upholding the precepts, while some may violate the precepts and so are not 100% pure. When lay Buddhists see Sangha members whose behavior does not accord with the Dharma and precepts, they should reflect as such. This is a matter for the monastics to address. The Sangha has its own monastic rules to deal with such unwholesome members. And when seeing some Sangha members with poor behavior, it is important that lay Buddhists do not carelessly criticize the Sangha as a whole, nor should they condemn that particular individual or those particular Sangha members. For lay Buddhists who are sincere in supporting and protecting the Dharma, if you see, a Sangha member behave improperly, out of compassion, without spite or anger, you can report what you see to the Sangha and provide suggestions. But the authority and responsibility to deal with such unruly monastics remain with the Sangha. According to the regulations set by the Buddha, until a Sangha member has been expelled, even if they violate the precepts and the law, They should only be punished, they should not be punished under secular law and only be dealt with under the precepts, the monastic precepts. So where there is a dispute between the monastic regulations and secular law in the ancient days, the king can only apply the Vinaya to deal with these types of monastics. Now, if a king does not follow the Vinaya to deal with the offending monastic properly, that king will have committed the grave karma of damaging and defaming the Sangha, as well as end up creating more disputes within the Sangha. So you may think that if a Sangha member cannot be punished under secular law, under the laws of a country, then they get off scot-free. This is certainly not the case. For one thing, it is very, very unlikely that a true practitioner of the Sangha will violate any laws of a country. Now, if there are monastics who join the Sangha with insincere reasons, then these corrupt Sangha members, when they commit a crime, the best procedure is for that member to be reported to the Sangha, and after facing disciplinary procedures under the precepts and then being expelled by the Sangha, that particular member returns to the status of a householder. And as a householder, they can then be dealt with by the law for the crime that they have committed. Now, every person who is a Buddhist monastic is a member of the Buddhist Sangha. Lay devotees should not allow thoughts of discriminations to arise, such as differentiating monastics based on age, gender, level of knowledge and practice, degree of diligence, or how well members uphold the precepts, etc., etc. No matter what their background, as long as that person is a member of the Sangha, then as a lay Buddhist, you should respect and treat all Sangha members equally. Now, this is because the Sangha community is like the great ocean, which is home to fish and animals of all sizes, as well as harboring plants and treasures of all sorts. The ocean does not discriminate between the various animals and plants. It embraces them all equally. So as lay Buddhist, you should learn to be like the ocean and embrace the Sangha members equally. Sadly, it is human nature to have preferences, and so there are people who emphasize upholding the precepts or practicing meditation and so forth. And as a result, they judge Sangha members based on their personal preferences. Now, because of such emphasis, it is commonly seen that people can develop discriminations and begin to compare Sangha members based on their strengths and weaknesses. And consequently, lay followers can even begin to develop factions that support certain members and oppose other Sangha members. One thing that you should all be mindful of is that each person has developed different karmic affinity with different people. And so it is not uncommon that we may be closer to certain venerables compared to others. In particular, if we study under a certain master or have more dealings with certain monastics, we may trust them more and favor them more. This is human nature, and there is nothing fundamentally or really, really bad or wrong about this situation. This is the karmic affinity we have created. Rather, as a practitioner, one should bear in mind that the affinity to a certain monastic is due to the wholesome karmic connections created in the past. So from a practice aspect, we should learn to maintain equality when dealing with other Sangha members that we are less familiar with. And we should learn to develop more wholesome karmic affinity with more and different Sangha members, so that going forward, we can be able to develop the equality towards all Sangha members. So one way to do this is when you're dealing with members that you're not familiar with, try to look upon them in the same way as the members that you are close to. The virtue of the Sangha members is not something that ordinary people can understand and comprehend. So take, for example, the situation where some people emphasizes seniority based on age of the members. And as a result, they may look down on some of the younger Sangha members. Such people do not realize that seniority based on age is simply a reflection of the aging and the decay of this body. Now, as people grow old, it doesn't mean that their defilements decrease. So age is no indicator of virtue. The right attitude for lay Buddhists to have is to have confidence towards all Sangha members. Although there are many differences among the Sangha members, as long as that person is a Buddhist monastic, they belong to the Sangha and they follow the Buddha and practice his path. As long as they are a monastic, as long as there are monastics around, there will be Buddhist temples and monasteries. There will be statues and images of the Buddhas and sages. There will be the preservation of the sutras and scriptural texts. And there will be a complete triple gem for the lay followers to take refuge in. The Buddha Dharma's preservation and propagation crucially relies on monastic Sangha members. And even though differences such as senior, junior, more or less accomplished, sagely and ordinary may exist in the worldly Sangha members, collectively, as a whole, the Sangha is the powerful community, and this Sangha community maintains and protects the righteous Buddha Dharma like a strong moat and fort that protects a city from external invading forces. Now, we can all reflect on our own experience of how we met with Buddhism. It's unlikely that you would have met with a Buddha yourself. More likely, it is due to having encounter with monastic members and the Dharma. So therefore, even though a monastic may have faults and imperfection, as long as they are still a qualified member of the Sangha, they are a field of merit within this human world and the heavenly realms for people to take refuge in and learn from. Now, lay Buddhists who are devout and sincere should particularly respect the Sangha community as a whole. Lay followers should cherish and support the Sangha in ways that promote harmony and purity in the Sangha. It is imperative that lay followers do not criticize or hold enmity or negativity towards some Sangha members, or even use their worldly influence to stir up discord within a Sangha. During the Buddha's time, there was an instance where a dispute arose within the Sangha and the members even ignored the Buddha's advice. As a result, the Sangha split into two communities. Even under this situation, the Buddha told the lay followers that both communities are still the Sangha and should be supported with offerings equally. A fitting analogy is the saying, just as a large piece of gold is smashed into smaller pieces, each piece is still gold. So this saying can serve as a maxim for lay Buddhists when dealing with Sangha members. So that covers both the Dharma and the Sangha gem for today. And I think in terms of time, we're about up to the hour. Is that right, Larry?
I got 5 minutes, so maybe one question.
Yeah, yep. Is there any questions or comments? Anything that needs to be clarified?
Yeah, we have up to we finish at 7:30, but next class is 8 o'clock. So anybody would like to have any questions? Nobody? Everybody sleepy?
It was very clear.
Very clear? Yeah. It's very tough though, to me.
Yeah, I think the history though is like one of the biggest issues in the Sangha is having schisms, right? So that's
Yes.
kind of like the story.
And
happens.
it's not just, it happens. It's not just historical either, because you guys are lay Buddhists, you're not part of the Sangha, you probably won't see this happen, or you won't know about these things happening. But as an insider, I can tell you it still happens today, because Sangha members are human. Until we've become arahats and, Buddhas and great bodhisattvas, we still have defilements. And so we're still on the path of practice. But
Actually,
that's why it's more, sorry?
No, go ahead.
Oh no. Yeah, so that's why, because I do hear from, various lay devotees, sometimes they'll talk about certain members and say, oh, I saw so-and-so did this and that. And in a sense, it's either complaining or criticizing. But it's also because they don't understand how the Sangha works, in a sense, because you're standing from the outside, not the inside. And that's why it's so important, this particular last verse from Venerable Yin-Shun, to remind the lay devotees not to criticize Sangha members, even when you do see them behave in ways that you think is wrong. Because you don't know their background, you don't know the whole picture of what has happened and so forth. And you don't know how afflicted they are by their own defilements. But what you also don't see is the post actions, what that member does to try and redeem themselves, to repent, to change through their practice. That's something you're unlikely to see as well. So your criticism will only, stay at that point in time where you saw them behave in a way that you thought was inappropriate. So that's why it's important to, I guess you can reflect on yourself, when you make a mistake and then you try to make amends for it. That's the important part, recognizing you've made a mistake, making amends and moving forward. And that is part of the practice of purification as well, to be able to see where our defilements and afflictions lie, and then to apply the Dharma and the practices to help tame those afflictions and defilements and eventually remove them. That's part of the practice of purification as well.
The Sangha rule is very different than everyday life. So when you are not this part of the, I should say the monastic part, we cannot say anything because they have their rule that we don't know. A lot of people try to find out why they have to do this. You don't need to ask why. That's the way they have to do that, So why don't they thrive? Why don't they? A lot of people, it's non-Buddhists, I should say, they always say, why they have to do this? I said, don't ask me why. Just don't ask why. I'm not the monastic. I'm not the monastic. This is a very often in the Western.
A general response, when you come across these questions, a general response you can give them is that the Buddha's monastic rules are to help us in our practice of cultivation. So they're not like secular law, which aims to prohibit you from certain activities purely because someone, in power thinks that's appropriate.
Yeah, Larry,
with Buddha's wisdom,
let's finish the class
he
and then
set
we
up.
chat after that, right?
Yeah,
So some
yeah.
people might want to do something before.
Yeah, you can
Sure.
I'll keep it open so you can continue
Yes,
discussing
yes.
whatever. We're just catching up.
Yep.
Time after this.
Yes.
3 bows to the Buddha.
Sure.
Bow to the teacher.
Thank you, everyone, for not falling asleep,
you.
I hope.
Thank you.
Not a chance.
Yeah.